The significance of the construction industry in the attainment of a nation's quest for development and self-reliance cannot be overemphasized. The industry serves valuable functions in the society that vary according to social need. This is evident in the fact that every individual, business or services of diverse kinds must have a shelter and a location in the environment. Sadly, the housing stock that does exist in Nigeria is expensive when compared to local household income. How can the high cost of housing construction be addressed in the country? This is Housing Development, where we discuss housing, affordability, and accessibility. As always, I am Flora Ani, your housing diva. Let's see the news making waves in the sector.
The Mortgage Banking Association of Nigeria, MBAN, has offered to partner the federal government for effective implementation of the newly approved 250 billion naira mortgage and real estate investment fund. MBAN said its members in mortgage banks and brokers were ready to ensure that the benefits reach the targeted Nigerians for the initiative. The association announced this in a statement yesterday in Abuja by its president, Ebilate Makuroki, and its executive secretary, Dr. Adedeji Ajadi, in reaction to federal government approval of the fund to address Nigeria's housing deficit. The Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, FMBN, has secured a 100 billion off-taker guarantee to support the development of the Karasana Renewed Hope City in Abuja. The Renewed Hope cities located in the FCT, Lagos and Kano are part of the Public-Private Partnership PPP agreement under the Renewed Hope Cities and Estate programs designed to address Nigeria's housing deficit. The announcement was made by the Minister of Housing and Urban Development, Musa Dangiwa, during a presentation of the State House Gallery, Aso Villa, on Sunday. Dangiwa highlighted that the guarantee has already enabled developers to mobilize over 40 billion naira in financing, marking a major milestone in efforts to tackle the country's housing challenge. Experts in Nigeria's housing sector are set to provide insights into the financial and regulatory challenges in achieving the federal government's Renewed Hope agenda on housing at the forthcoming 2024 edition of the Property and Environment Writers Association of Nigeria P1 Annual Conference in Lagos. The conference, themed Resolving the Financial and Regulatory Dilemma in Achieving the Renewed Hope Agenda on Housing, will feature the Managing Director of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria FMBN, Shehu Usman Osidi, as a keynote speaker and the Managing Director of UPDC, Odunayo Ojo, as guest speaker. The event will be chaired by the former president of the Nigerian Institute of Building, NIOB, Kunle Awobodu. The event will focus on removing barriers to effective housing production by improving access to low-cost financing and aligning with the federal government's housing agenda.
To read the full details of the news, do well to visit www.africanhousingnews.com. You're watching Housing Development. Stakeholders from across the building and construction industry have called for urgent and effective measures to tackle the persistent issue of building collapse in Nigeria. This demand was made during a conference organized by the Standards Organization of Nigeria in Abuja, which brought together key players in the sector to deliberate on improving standards and ensuring structural safety.
Stakeholders from across the building and construction industry have called for urgent and effective measures to tackle the persistent issue of building collapse in Nigeria. This demand was made during an interview in Abuja where key players in the sector spoke on improving standards and ensuring structural safety. They said it is important to foster collaboration among regulators, professionals and artisans to address challenges such as substandard materials, inadequate enforcement of building codes, and quackery in construction practices.
Most times, honestly, one asks, when things happen, one asks that, oh, where is Standard Organization of Nigeria in all of this? If you go about all our building materials markets today, you discover that what you find out there are much more substandard material, such that, you know, these substandard materials are even now being taken for granted that, okay, it's the normal. The Standard Organization of Nigeria is now talking about the need for us to adhere to standard practices in the industry, especially in the building industry. Honestly, it cannot come at a better time than this. And I believe that if SON will actually wake up to their responsibility, we see that it will help to address majority of the problem or challenges that we are having as concerns building collapse in the country.
Actually, you know, generally in life, we talk about safety. When you talk about safety, you talk about doing the right thing at the right time. When we want to build, you need to have a competent designer who actually will do, before embarking on the design, we do environmental impacts to know how the land is and how suitable it is. And after that, when you are going to choose somebody to build for you, you need to pick people who are professionally qualified. For instance, in Koren, we are the one that regulates engineering in all ramifications. And we have the Cobon people who are actually builders. So you don't pick from the road. When you pick from the road, you will actually have a problem with yourself. Maybe probably you engage the quacks. And apart from that, the material procurement has to be well tested. That is why SON, they are involved in testing of material that come from abroad and even that come from actually Nigeria.
Key stakeholders in the industry also addressed the role of proper design and the use of locally appropriate construction methods. They highlighted the prevalence of substandard building materials in the market and called for the enforcement of building regulations and tougher penalties for non-compliance.
The building collapse is like an industrial process. And each process, if it's not carried out properly, you discover that you have a defect. And this defect can lead to building collapse. Now you are talking about enforcement. Enforcement is a collective responsibility. Government alone cannot withstand that. Despite the fact that government is in charge of making laws. The National Assembly makes laws and so on and so forth. But as you make law, are you making the materials available? Do you have an alternative? Are you into the M&E? What I mean, monitoring and evaluation. Are you into the training components? So building collapse has a lot of process involved. Enforcement by government alone will not stop it. There are quite a lot of factors.
Builder Samson Opaloa, chairman of the Council of Registered Builders of Nigeria, Cobon, reiterated the council's commitment to tackling the issue.
Let me say that buildings don't collapse on paper. But buildings are, a building is a multi-stakeholder activity. That is to say that so many stakeholders are involved, so many professionals are involved. And as we begin to prioritize the expertise that each professional possesses and utilize it appropriately, the story will change. And we have moved even beyond the training of the tertiary artisans, tertiary professionals. We've gone down to the tactical artisans and technicians. We have begun to train them, to license them, and to certify them. And we are going beyond that to all those who have acquired some form of competencies in different methods and areas. We are bringing them under what we call the recognition of prior learning, so that we assess them, know what they are capable of doing, know what they lack, and give to them what they lack so that they can be more competent.
Meanwhile, they called for the government's commitment to enforce standards and improve the quality of building materials in the country.
Welcome back. Nigeria is currently facing a severe housing crisis characterized by a staggering deficit and escalating costs that affect millions of citizens. The housing sector in Nigeria faces issues of low purchasing power among households, high construction costs, and inadequate housing supply to keep up with population growth. What is the way forward to mitigate the housing crisis? Let's listen to these housing stakeholders.
Housing is a social right. However, considering the limitations that we are in today, government themselves cannot provide all of their housing. Housing supply is more on the informal side than on the formal side, and the reason is simple. On the formal side, their housing are not so affordable. Let's take the Renewed Cities project. One bedroom unit of accommodation in the Renewed City project cost about 21 million naira, or about 22 million naira. Now the thing is, how many of us, how many ordinary Nigerians, how many persons, young persons like myself, are able to afford 22 million naira, okay, to either pay incrementally or outright buy? So these are the things. So government needs to go back and look at housing from a social lens rather than from a business angle.
I told the minister and the member of parliament that they need to invest on social housing scheme for all. And we are looking at 3 pillars. The first pillar is accessibility, livability, and affordability. According to the UN mandate, between now and 2030, we expect that no one should be in this world without a roof in their head, without a home to call their own, without a place to sleep. And that is why we are promoting issues of urbanization, leaving no one behind. That is the mandate of the UN Habitat, leaving no one behind. Affordable housing, livable housing, and affordability. So we want to see the government of Nigeria putting resources in terms of sustainable housing for all. They can build small housing scheme, 1 bedroom self-contained, for workers, for students, and for people from the informal sector.
All the days, all the years, we are copycats. I'm talking about Africans. We copy because it looks beautiful. We don't copy because it suits our own environment, right? So the first option is that we should begin to believe in ourselves. Before the Yoruba people came, we were building and they were not collapsing. Why don't we research into the building materials used by our forefathers and of course improve on them? I want to believe that if we do that, it will of course make it affordable, because initially we just people will excavate the ground. Of course they know how to choose their site for the excavation, pull the substructure, pull them up, mold them into local blocks and build with them. There are some in the north that build with a mixture of cow dungs. It has its own strength. So my thinking is that we should research into our local environment and then make use of what is available. But of course, improvement in technology, it will be better than what we are doing now.
Attention, Africa. The most anticipated event in the housing sector is here, the Africa Housing Awards. It's time to celebrate the people, projects, and companies that are transforming African housing. Nominate your favorites and let their achievements be recognized across the continent. Who do you think has made the biggest impact in affordable housing, sustainable design, and innovation? Now's your chance to make your choice heard. Visit www.africahousingawards.com today and nominate your preferred winners. Show your support for those making a difference in the housing industry. The Africa Housing Awards, celebrating excellence in housing across Africa. Nominate now.
It's good news. Are you a stakeholder in the built environment, or you are looking for an authentic, credible source for housing and construction news in Africa? You now have an opportunity. Africa International Housing Show has now created a unique opportunity for you by establishing a full-fledged housing television, the first of its kind in Africa. You can now access information on home ownership, rental, building materials, finance, real estate and insurance, among others, all on Housing TV Africa, channel 149 on StarTimes.
For Nigeria's real estate sector to flourish, the government must create an enabling environment that incentivizes investment, reforming policies, particularly the outdated Land Use Act of 1978 is crucial. By simplifying the land acquisition process and decentralizing land administration, Nigeria can reduce bureaucratic delays, attracting more investors. Comprehensive housing policies that prioritize affordable housing, slum upgrades, and sustainable urban planning could encourage public-private partnerships and support developers focused on low-income housing. That said, I will be back shortly.
Hi, I'm Bob Weinsheng, CEO of iBuild Global, and keep watching the Housing Development Program.
We don't have road. And you see, at times, if it is raining, you will see a lot of people will go by the roadside. They'll be thrown dirt on the main road. We also doesn't have toilet. You will see a toilet, you will see up to 30 tenants. They are using one. You can't leave your door open, go and buy something. Before you will know, Babambola will enter. By the time you will take them to police station, 1 hour is too much. The police people will release them. In fact, we don't know what is happening.
This is the situation with many citizens in not just Nigeria. Are we ready for this conversation? What is the plight of an average Nigerian citizen in regards to housing? Housing is a fundamental human right, and these issues must be addressed.
Welcome back. In a bid to effect efficient governance in advancing Nigeria's housing development goals, the chairman and members of the Committee on Housing and Habitat paid an oversight visit to the MD CEO of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria at the bank's headquarters in Abuja. Our correspondent will give more details.
In a bid to effect efficient governance in advancing Nigerians' housing development goals, the chairman and members of the Committees on Housing and Habitat paid an oversight visit to the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, FMBN, Shehu Osidi, at the bank's headquarters in Abuja. Delivering his opening remarks, the MD and CEO of the Federal Mortgage Bank of Nigeria, Shehu Osidi, highlighted the progress, challenges and opportunities in the operations of Nigerians' foremost provider of affordable housing finance.
The mandate and functions of the FMBN include the following. One is to link the mortgage finance market with the capital market and develop a viable secondary mortgage market. Then to encourage the emergence and promote the growth of primary mortgage banks to serve the delivery of housing in Nigeria. And then also to mobilize domestic and foreign funds. Then construction finance to public and private sector estate development companies. And then affordable housing microfinance soft loans for home expansion and home renovation, which we popularly call home renovation loans. And of course, we have also rent-to-own products.
OCD listed key activities and achievements of the bank,